Hey there, welcome back. Great to see you again for Law number 8. Read the invisible script. People act according to hidden mental narratives. If you haven't watched the previous episodes yet, you're missing some important steps in this book. Read the invisible script is not about words on paper. It's about the silent code that governs human behavior, the unwritten story each person carries inside them. A script is the mental blueprint formed from childhood experiences, cultural values, personal victories, and private wounds. It dictates how someone reacts under pressure, who they trust, what they fear, and even the choices they think are their own. You can't see it, but it's always there, shaping decisions before a single conscious thought is made. If you can learn to read it, you'll see beyond people's words into the architecture of their true intentions. Every human being is an actor, but the play they perform is written long before they step on stage. The lines they deliver, the way they stand, even the choices they believe are theirs alone, all of it flows from an invisible script, shaped by years of unseen rehearsal. This script is not a conscious creation. It is assembled from the fragments of childhood memories, the values whispered by culture, the survival strategies forged in moments of fear or triumph. It is so embedded that most people mistake it for just the way I am. The tragedy and the opportunity lies in this. People rarely rewrite their scripts. They may change costumes, move to a new stage, or play a different role in public, but the structure of their responses remains the same. If someone learned as a child that silence was safety, they will grow into an adult who holds back their thoughts when the air thickens with tension. If someone grew up earning praise only when they achieved more than others, they will carry that hunger into every workplace, relationship, and rivalry. And because they believe these instincts are natural, they never question them. Psychology explains why scripts persist. The brain is an energy economist. It favors patterns that conserve mental effort. Decisions are expensive to make, so once the brain finds a path that works, it tends to walk it again and again. Neuroscientists call these heuristics, shortcuts that speed up judgment. Over time, the shortcut becomes the highway, and the highway becomes the only road you know. What began as adaptation becomes identity. History shows that the ability to read these scripts is a form of quiet power. Court advisors in ancient China studied not only the emperor's public decrees, but also his smallest reactions, the tilt of his head when displeased, the length of his pause before agreeing. Over years, they could predict his responses to petitions before the words left his mouth. In the West, the same skill appeared in the royal courts of Europe, where survival often depended not on being correct, but on knowing how the ruler's script would unfold. In everyday life, the same principle applies. The colleague who sabotages your work is not responding to this week's project. They are acting from an older script, one in which outshining others was the only way to feel safe. The partner who hesitates to commit is not weighing you alone. They are replaying the uncertainty learned from a parent who left. When you take behavior at face value, you react only to the scene in front of you. But when you read the invisible script, you understand the entire plot. This is why mastering the skill matters. If you can see the script, you can predict the next line. If you can predict the next line, you can decide whether to rewrite the scene or walk off stage before the act ends badly. And unlike most forms of power, this one works even in silence, because the script is always running, whether they speak or not. To read the invisible script, you must first understand what it's made of. A script is not a single memory or belief. It is an intricate weave of experiences, emotions, and cultural imprints, layers built over a lifetime until they harden into instinct. Every person you meet is carrying a personal manuscript written by these forces, and while the handwriting may differ, the structure is often the same. The first and most powerful author of this script is personal history. The earliest years of life write the opening chapters, and those chapters are rarely erased. A child raised in scarcity may grow into an adult who hoards opportunities and money, even when abundance is within reach. Another, raised in abundance, may become careless with resources, trusting that the world will always refill what is spent. A boy who only received affection when he achieved something may become a man who ties his worth to constant achievement, unable to rest without feeling invisible. The second author is cultural programming. Culture is not only tradition and ritual, it is the unseen hand that shapes how we define success, honor, love, and loss. In Japan, the concept of gamen, enduring hardship without complaint, can produce individuals who bear crushing burdens without asking for help. In Mediterranean cultures, where emotional expressiveness is valued, the same silence might be read not as strength but as coldness. Religion, too, plays its part. A devout Christian raised on the parable of the prodigal son may instinctively believe in redemption and second chances. A Buddhist shaped by the teachings of impermanence may respond to loss with acceptance rather than resistance. Neither response is inherently better, but each is a reflection of the script that has been rehearsed for years. Then there are emotional triggers, the pressure points that drive decisions faster than reason can keep up. Psychology shows us that most people's actions are guided more by avoiding pain than by seeking pleasure. This is why loss aversion, the fear of losing what we already have, can override even the promise of a greater gain. A politician might reject a bold but risky policy not because it's unwise, but because the script of avoiding blame is stronger than the script of pursuing vision. A manager may keep an underperforming employee because firing them would reopen the emotional wound of having been abandoned themselves. History is littered with examples of leaders and nations locked into scripts. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in decades of brinkmanship, not because every confrontation made strategic sense, but because each side was following a pre-written ideological script: freedom versus communism, good versus evil. Once the narrative was set, both nations reacted more to the demands of the script than to the reality of the moment, often escalating conflicts that could have been diffused. Understanding these layers, history, culture, emotion, is what separates guesswork from mastery. When you hear someone's words, you are hearing the latest scene. When you understand their script, you know how the next act will play out. And if you master this skill, you will not only read individuals, but also entire groups, companies, political movements, even nations, predicting their behavior before they know it themselves. Reading a script is not about mystical intuition or guessing what someone is thinking. It is about disciplined observation. The patterns are always there. Most people simply fail to notice them because they are too busy reacting to the latest line of dialogue. To read a person's script, you must step back from the scene and watch how the play unfolds over time. The first key is to listen for repetition. Scripts reveal themselves through recurring phrases, consistent emotional reactions, and repeated decision patterns. A colleague who begins most conversations with stories of being wronged will almost certainly react defensively in negotiations because their script casts them as the misunderstood victim. A friend who tells stories of triumph over odds may welcome challenges others would avoid because their role in the script is that of the resilient hero. The second key is to watch for emotional spikes. People often hide their scripts well in neutral moments, but when pressure hits, the old programming bursts through. Psychologists call this script leakage, the unconscious spilling into the conscious moment. The business leader who prides themselves on rationality may suddenly lash out when their authority is questioned, revealing a script rooted in fear of losing control. A seemingly confident partner may go silent when finances are discussed, exposing a childhood imprint of scarcity. A common mistake is to assume that your own logic applies to others. This is where most failed predictions begin. You may think, if I were them, I would, but you are not them. Your script is different. To avoid this trap, practice contextual reading. Before interpreting someone's action, consider their background, values, and past patterns. For example, offering public praise might motivate someone raised in a culture that values public honor, but it could embarrass or even alienate someone from a culture where humility is prized. The process becomes faster with pattern matching. The more scripts you've observed, the easier it is to recognize similar ones in new people. This is why seasoned negotiators and detectives often seem eerily accurate in their predictions. They've seen the same characters in different costumes. A detective might spot the same evasive body language in a suspect as they did in a witness years earlier, knowing exactly what it means before a word is spoken. Real life offers countless examples. I once watched a startup founder pitch to an investor. The founder emphasized passion, mission, and societal change, believing these would win the investor's trust. The investor, however, had a script shaped by decades in finance. He responded not to dreams, but to data. The founder failed to read the script and lost the deal, not because the idea was bad, but because the language didn't match the role the investor was prepared to play. When you read the script correctly, you see not just the person, but the story they are living inside. And when you can see the story, you can anticipate the next move before it happens. This is why script reading is not only a tool for understanding, it is a tool for prediction, and prediction is the seed of power. Once you can read the invisible script, you stand at a crossroads. Knowledge alone will tempt you to sit back, smug in the power of prediction, but true mastery lies in knowing when to work with the script, when to rewrite it, and when to make sure it never writes over you. Using the script to influence. The simplest and most effective way to influence someone is to speak in the language of their role. If their script casts them as the hero, you do not present yourself as the savior, you present yourself as the quest they have been waiting for. If they see themselves as the protector, you frame your request as an opportunity to guard what matters most. This is not flattery, it is structural alignment. In sales, for example, a client whose life story is built around being the visionary will respond best to ideas framed as bold innovation, while a client whose script is grounded in stability will need to hear words like secure, proven, and tested. The defensive angle. Equally important is the ability to recognize when someone is running their script on you. Scripts can be weaponized, guilt trips, false urgency, moral high ground plays, all designed to make you act in service of their storyline. The pushy salesman is not just offering a deal, he is trying to write you into the role of the one who seizes the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The manipulative friend casting you as the selfish one is using a script where they are always the long-suffering giver. When you see the role they are trying to hand you, you can choose not to step on stage. Historical examples of script manipulation. In politics, Franklin D. Roosevelt was a master of script reading. During the Great Depression, he recognized that the American public script had shifted from rugged individualism to a desperate need for collective stability. Instead of pushing policies that demanded sacrifice without reassurance, he delivered fireside chats that recast him as the calm, fatherly figure guiding the nation back to safety. The policies mattered, but it was the script alignment that made them palatable. In war, Alexander the Great understood that his generals each had their own personal scripts. Some needed glory, others needed security, still others needed intellectual stimulation. By feeding each according to their inner role, he kept them loyal far longer than pure military force would have allowed. Religious and philosophical tactics. Even spiritual leaders have used this skill with precision. Jesus, for example, didn't speak to fishermen and scholars in the same way. The fishermen got parables about nets in the sea. The scholars got debates rooted in Scripture. Both groups heard their own language, their own story reflected back at them. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna does not tell Arjuna to abandon his role. He reframes it, transforming Arjuna's warrior duty into a spiritual path, aligning action with belief rather than against it. Strategic prediction in action. Once you can read and align with someone's script, prediction becomes second nature. In a high-stakes corporate merger I observed, one executive predicted that a rival would sabotage the deal, not because of any public statement, but because every past move the rival had made fit a script of being the disruptor who swoops in last minute. By anticipating this, they prepared countermeasures before the sabotage even began, turning a potential crisis into a demonstration of foresight. Mini psychological deep dives. Framing. Presenting information in a way that fits the person's existing worldview rather than challenging it head-on. Anchoring. Introducing an initial idea or number that becomes the reference point for all further discussion, making it part of the script. Emotional congruence. Matching the emotional tone of the script so the person feels you are one of them, which lowers resistance. Why this matters. When you can work with a script, you can move people without open conflict. When you can rewrite it, you can change their behavior without them feeling coerced. And when you can reject a script aimed at you, you protect your autonomy, ensuring you are the author of your own story, not a side character in someone else's. To live beyond the invisible script is to step into authorship of your own life. It begins with the courage to see yourself as others might see you, stripped of the excuses and justifications you've rehearsed for years. The truth is that you are not only a reader of other people's scripts, you are the product of your own. Every reflex, every instinct, every fear you justify as just who I am was shaped by forces you did not choose. The family you were born into, the culture you grew up in, the victories you celebrated, and the wounds you carried in silence. Some of these lines have served you well, giving you strength when you needed it most. Others have trapped you, making you repeat choices that lead to the same outcomes, as if your life were a loop that only changes the scenery but never the plot. The first step in mastery is recognition. Just as you can watch another person and identify their recurring patterns, you must watch yourself with the same unblinking eye. Notice how you react to criticism. Notice how you respond to praise. Notice which types of people you trust instantly and which you doubt without reason. Each reaction is a clue, a glimpse of the script that drives you. When you feel a disproportionate emotional surge, anger too hot for the moment, fear too sharp for the actual risk, you have touched one of your script's anchor points. It is here that the past leaks into the present. Once you see the structure, you can decide whether it serves you. A script written in a time of survival may not be fit for a time of opportunity. The boy who learned to avoid conflict to keep the peace at home may find, as a man, that this instinct costs him promotions, influence, and respect. The woman who learned to seek approval at every turn may discover that her desire to be liked prevents her from making bold, necessary moves. Recognizing these outdated lines is not enough. You must be willing to rewrite them. This is not the quick edit of changing a word. It is the slow, deliberate work of practicing new responses until they feel as natural as the old ones once did. History shows that the refusal to rewrite a script can destroy not only individuals but entire civilizations. The French generals of World War II clung to the defensive strategies that had served them in the Great War, believing the script of trench warfare would protect them again. The world had changed, the enemy had changed, but the script remained the same, and France fell in weeks. Conversely, leaders who adapt their scripts often outlast their rivals. Winston Churchill, for all his flaws, rewrote himself multiple times, from military officer to political outcast to wartime leader, adjusting his role to the needs of the moment. Religion offers its own quiet lessons in script evolution. The Buddha's path to enlightenment began not by denying the script of his royal life, but by walking beyond it, leaving the palace to confront suffering directly, reshaping his entire understanding of existence. In the Christian tradition, Saul the persecutor becomes Paul the apostle, not through gradual reform, but by a radical rewrite of his identity and purpose. These transformations were not accidental. They came from encounters that shattered the old script and demanded a new one. Living beyond scripts does not mean erasing your past. Your past is the ink with which you now write. The experiences that shaped you, for better or worse, are not burdens to discard, but tools to wield. A difficult childhood may have taught you resilience. A betrayal may have sharpened your instincts. If you can take these elements and place them consciously into a story you choose to live, you stop being a prisoner of your history and become its author. At the highest level of mastery, reading scripts becomes a way of forecasting. You begin to see the arcs not just of people, but of organizations, markets, even nations. You can sense when a company will crumble because it refuses to deviate from its founding narrative. You can tell when a relationship will end because both people are locked into roles that no longer serve them. You can predict a political shift years in advance by watching the public script evolve beneath the headlines. This is not clairvoyance, it is pattern recognition sharpened to a blade's edge. In the end, the choice is stark. You can live as a character in a play you did not write, reacting to lines written long before you were aware they existed. Or you can step into the role of the playwright, reading the scripts around you while shaping your own. To know the script is to survive. To master it is to predict. But to rewrite it, that is to rule the stage itself. All right, that's a wrap for Part 8. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate your time and energy. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and keeps the content coming your way. And be sure to check out Part 9, where we dive into Spot the Mask. Until then, take care and keep growing. See you in the next one.